We're in the book of Exodus, in case you didn't know. We've been in this book for a while now. We're studying through the book. This is not, for those of you, deep Bible scholars, this is not an in-depth word kind of biblical study through the book. So we're not stopping at every little bit and dissecting it. You want to do that, you're more than welcome. Call me, I'll sit in and listen to what you have to say. Okay? I did all that in college, and we could go through something like that, but for the purpose of this evening, we're just studying through the narrative of Exodus. Because I told you right at the start, a lot of us, and I throw myself in this category, we start reading Exodus, and somewhere along the line, you start with Genesis, you reach Exodus, and somewhere along the line, we give up. We give up, and none of us have really truly finished Exodus in one reading when we decided to read it. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get a whole overview and understand God through this book. Now, last week, we went all the way up to where Israel crossed the Red Sea. The Egyptians were drowned in the Red Sea. Israel goes through. We see a God who protects them. We see a God who guides them as a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire. We see a God who brings them out, and then they start grumbling and whining about the food. And we see a God who provides for them in a supernatural way. And we marveled at that kind of a God. And this week we're going to take the story a little further. And I'll tell you right at the start that we're going to jump 2 chapters. Okay, last week we were in chapter 18 at the end of it, where God, chapter 17, where God provides water from the rock as well. Okay, He gave manna and then He gave water from the rock. And we're going to go through the second half of 17, 18, 19. We're just going to I'm just going to tell you the story so that you know what is there. And I'll tell you why we're not going to be dwelling on those passages this evening, but we're going to pick it up from chapter 20 onwards. So in chapter 17, after God gives them water from the rock, they fight their first big battle. Okay, and they fight against a guy called Amalek. Okay, he brings out his army, and they meet, and they fight, and it's a brilliant story of a supernatural victory. Okay, and God's already been doing incredible things with them. He's been showing His supernatural power through Egypt and how He brought them out. And again, they're going to see it as they battle against this army. And then as they win and they continue on in their journey through the wilderness, they're walking through the wilderness. Remember I told you they went the long route. They didn't go the short route. They're going the long route. They meet Moses' father-in-law. Yeah. He was married. Remember? We talked about him being married and his 2 kids and his wife Zipporah. Well, his father-in-law comes and he's got a really cool name, Jethro. Yeah. Jethro comes out to meet Moses in chapter 18, and he comes out to Moses and he gives him this advice. He comes out to Moses and he watches Moses, he says, "You're blessed, God is with you, it's incredible what God is doing." And then he watches Moses sit down and judge the people. So all the people bring their issues, he hit me, she hit me, they didn't do this, my child is ugly, whatnot. They bring all the issues before him, and Moses is judging. And Jethro goes up to Moses and says, this is not right, Moses. You're going to burn yourself out, and the people, because they have to wait, because each one who has to meet you, remember 600,000 people are with Moses. So each one who wants to meet you, they have to wait their turn, and they're going to get annoyed. This system of yours is not working. Moses, why don't you set up leaders who will handle the cases, and the ones that are too big for them, they'll bring to you, and you handle those. So basically, he set up our High Court and Supreme Court system right there. Jethro gives Moses this advice. And chapter 17 and 18, there's wealth. Okay, I enjoyed studying it. Go back, read through it. I enjoyed it. But a lot of the principles that you pick up in that are leadership principles. Okay, so I'm saving that. All the stuff I got, I wrote it down. It's there in my computer. I've saved it. And when somebody invites me to speak on leadership, it's going to come out. But not this evening. Then they move on from Jethro, with the meeting with Jethro. They continue down and they reach Mount Sinai in chapter 19. And Mount Sinai, it's a whole narrative, it's a whole description of how God comes to meet with them over there. And He basically scares the living daylights out of them. Okay, fire, cloud, thunder. He shows up on the mountain and He tells Moses, "You're going to come up and meet me. If any of them touch the mountain, they're dead. Even if an animal touches the mountain, it's dead. Any of them, so stay far. None of them can come close. Stay far. Tell them to keep their kids far away. Tell them to keep their animals far away. Nobody comes close, Moses. It's just you. You, and He brings Joshua along to sit at the base as his aid. And God allows that. That's it. And so that's chapter 19. And as I look through it, the point that it makes is how God is to be feared. God's a scary God. And as I looked at it, I realized that, I labored that point quite a lot about 4 weeks ago. And so if you're new in this series and you've joined us halfway through, go back and listen to it online. And you'll see that God is a God who's scary. It's not just a cuddly best friend. He's a scary God. And He deserves to be feared. And the right response to God is fear. And chapter 19 really drives that home. It really drives that home to the Israelites. And in that context, you enter chapter 20. It's in the context of Israel at the base of the mountain, Moses up in the mountain, and this big scary God meeting with Moses up there, that you find chapter 20. And chapter 20 onwards, till chapter 23, is all the laws. Okay, now it's not an exhaustive mention of the laws. If you want to really understand the laws of Israel, go to the book of Leviticus. The whole book is law. Okay, the whole book, it's all just laws. The book of Leviticus. Numbers has a few and Deuteronomy has many more. But this is a short kind of a, little snippet of the law from chapter 20 to 23. And that's where we're going to base today. Now you might ask, but why? Because, I'm in the New Testament and I love Jesus, and Paul said we're no longer under the law, we're no longer slaves to the law. So why study the law? What's the point of the law? And to tell you that and to set up the reason why we study it and to set up the rest of what I'm going to say this evening, I want to take you through a real life experience. Okay? And I've asked the person permission to use this because I'm not going to make fun of them, but you can make fun of them later. But a while ago, about a month ago, a little more than a month ago, we decided to travel, my wife and I. Actually, we decided to travel 3 years ago. It happened a few months ago. And as we decided to go, now, we got friends in Vasant Kunj, and we've heard all these weird stories about robberies that happen in Vasant Kunj. And we were like, we're not materialistic people, but we don't want our house broken into. We don't want things gone and stuff like that. So we were like, got to ask someone to stay in our house. And we looked for somebody who was homeless, struggling, didn't have anything to do. And we asked Sean to come and stay at our house. Yeah, now that goes on record online for the world to see. And we asked Sean to come stay at our house. And here's what we did. And he graciously accepted. He was, it was an upgrade from the little house he was staying in. Plus he had a TV and everything. So he came, he said, no, I'd love to. And then what we did after that was I met with him and I was like, okay, so here's the deal. You get the house. Get everything in the house. The microwave, the fridge, any food that was in the fridge when we left, the TV, the movie collection, everything, it's yours. But I sat with him here in office and then he came home as well. And we chatted and we were like, here's certain ground rules to living in our house. Okay. My wife was like, you got to keep it clean, man. When I come back, I don't want to find weird things in the fridge. It's happened before. We said, when we come back, Sean, you got to get up in the mornings. You got to make sure the maid is allowed in. When we come back, we don't want a maid saying, I came the whole month, nobody opened the door. And the house is this dusty place. And we're like, Sean, you got to wake up in the morning and open the door for the maid. We're like, Sean, no, I told him, you can have fun, you can have people over, but we love our neighbors love us. The music levels, the noise levels, post 11, 12, just be sensitive. Don't go soft. I'm not a killjoy. But, be sensitive. We love our neighbors. And then I was like, Sean, no girls. No girls allowed in. You're a single guy. I remember telling him, not even your sister. Because you know how our India works. Nah, sabke paas behan hai. That's what they'll say. So I was like, not even your sister. Nobody, Sean. You can have as many guys as you want in the house, but no girls. No girls in the house while we're gone. Now, I want you to understand that our rules that we gave him don't reflect what we think of him. Our rules that we gave Sean was not because I think he's an insensitive guy who's going to annoy all the neighbors mad. I don't think of him as a guy who's unclean. I don't think of him as a flirtatious guy. It's not that. The rules don't reflect the person I'm giving the rules to, but the rules are a reflection of me. The rules I gave him, the rules me and Emily, we sat together and we gave him are a reflection of our home. See, we like a clean home. We are a sensitive home. We have people over and we are sensitive to them. The neighbors, we're sensitive to them. We bring some of them to church sometimes. We're sensitive to them. We're not people who are known for having guys, girls over, everyone all over each other. You know that's not going to happen in our house. We are careful. We've had couples who stayed in our house. We had, one half of the couple that stayed in our house, and we were like, boss. And and the parents trusted us with them when the other half came over for dinner or something. They were like, you're going to his house, it's fine. Okay, you're there. Because we're known for that. So our rules to live in our house reflected us and our character. And when you ask the question, what is God like? What is God like? One of the best places to go is not to sit on your knees in your room and wait for this weird, meditative revelation of what God is like. One of the best places to go is the law. Because the rules of God reflect the character of God. And so when he comes to Moses and he says, Moses, this, that, and the other, it's all saying this, that, and the other, because you are going to be a reflection of me in this promised land that I give you. And so it's important to study the Word of God. Now there's a lot you can learn from the law of God, but again, like every good preacher, I'm going to pick 3. I found 6, 7, but I'm going to just pick 3, okay, for this evening. But 3 absolutely fundamental, crucial ones that just underscore everything that you know and believe about God. Now you know it, but I'm going to drive all 3 back home this evening. And the first is a simple one. God is a God of love. In chapter 20, you find God telling Moses the 10 commandments. He gives him the famous 10 commandments. Okay, all the 10 rules. He gives Moses those 10. And then all the way in the New Testament, in Matthew chapter 22 and verse 38, they come up to him, the scribes and the Pharisees. They say, which is the greatest commandment? And Jesus says, love the Lord thy God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor like yourself. And then he says in verse 40, he says, on these 2, the whole law and the prophets hang. They all hang on these 2. And if you look back to the 10 commandments that are found in Exodus, that are found in Deuteronomy, you will understand that Jesus was absolutely right. Because the first 4, they deal with loving God. And the last 6, they deal with loving your neighbor. And then all the other laws that he gave them also dealt with either loving God or loving your neighbor. And Jesus says, if you can wrap your heads around just this simple statement, love God, everything you've got, love your neighbor the same way you'd love yourself, you've understood the law in its fullness. It's brilliant. Because the foundation that Jesus lays in the New Testament is this. He says it's all about love. It's all about love. The whole law of God is about love. And I've said this to my home group and I've said this to close friends of mine so many times, they're probably sick of hearing it again. But D.A. Carson, one of the great theologians in our world today, he wrote a commentary on the book of Deuteronomy, which is all law. And he's named it the gospel according to Moses, which means the good news according to Moses. Because he's like, you can't read the law of God without seeing the loving heart of God behind it. And Jesus highlights it in the New Testament when he says, love God and love your neighbor. Everything that God had commanded the Israelites to do was about love. It was about love. Now it's not just your, wishy-washy, I love you, you love me kind of love. It's love in action. It's love that shows up in your actions. That kind of love. That's what Jesus is talking about. And when you see the laws that come, even after the 10 commandments, you will see it because God seems to put a really high value on life. A very high value on life. And through that, He's teaching the Israelites, you've got to value the other person because I value them. That's love. Don't just say I love you and then when they're not looking. One shot to the back of the head. Love in action is actions that say, I value you. I value you. And that's what Jesus teaches in the New Testament, and that's what God was expecting the Israelites to get. To read the law when they get it, and when Moses comes down and reads the law to them, for them to see it and say, wow, God really thinks life is valuable. And if He thinks life is valuable, boy, I gotta love people around me. I can't sit and say it's not my business. And that's the first fundamental thing you get from chapter 20 about the 10 commandments. that God is a God of love. And love in action. Love that shows up in action. The second thing you get is that God is a God of justice. God is a God of justice. And the little brilliance that I'm about to show is not mine. It's from a sermon I heard online. It's by Francis Chan. And he talks about the God of justice of the Bible. And he says, you read the law. Have you ever wondered when Jesus says, you have heard it said, a tooth for a tooth and an eye for an eye, but I tell you, love your enemies. Right? Jesus taught that. Now, how did Jesus change the law like that? Did God change his mind? You can argue Jesus was God, so he can change the law. But what? Jesus just annulled the law and said, you've heard A, but I'm telling you to do the opposite of A. Is that what is happening over here? No, because Jesus upheld the law. In fact, Jesus, it says, fulfill the law, and he even set a higher standard. So he said, you've heard it said, don't commit adultery, but I tell you, if you look at a woman twice, you've committed adultery. You heard it said, don't commit murder, but I tell you, if you say, I hate, you committed murder. So he, in fact, increased the standard of the law. So how did he seem to lower it in this one? An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth sounds like justice. How come suddenly, no, it's okay, don't do it? And Francis Chan answers it brilliantly. He says, human nature is such that if someone took your eye, you won't stop when you get back at taking one eye. You'd take two. And if someone took your life, if someone took the life of someone in your house, you won't stop at taking theirs. You'll annihilate the whole family. You'll go after the whole family. You will destroy them. And he says our justice systems are perverted in that way. They're perverted in that way. You have a robber, you have someone who by accident does something and they're in jail for life, and he's saying, he argues that a lot of time the punishment doesn't fit the crime. It's greater than the crime. And God in his brilliance in these laws is telling Israel, you will not exceed in your revenge taking. You will not exceed what is just. But that doesn't mean God is saying, take an eye is allowed. Ideally, Jesus says, ideally, you've heard that. I'm telling you this. Ideally, pray for those who persecute you and love your enemies. That's the ideal. But I know you're going to try to exact revenge. And when you do, and if you do, you will not go overboard. That's the law, because God is a God of justice. God's heart is a just heart. See, with love, God embodies love. He, in his very being, he is love. He defines what love is, and then he calls you to be loving. He does the same with justice. He defines what is just. Just by being him, everything else that is not him is not right. It is wrong. He defines right and wrong and moral and immoral. And he tells you what is just. And then he calls you to uphold justice. In fact, that's the anthem through the minor prophets of the Bible. They argue that they come and beg Israel to get back with God, and the charge against Israel is that they're idol worshippers. But they also bring the charge, a second and equally heavy charge, that they're not just, that they're corrupt, and they don't uphold the cause of the needy in their midst. God is very serious about justice. Listen to what Amos has to say. Amos chapter 5. Amos chapter 5 and verse 21 onwards. Okay, you've just sung beautifully, and Christmas time is coming. You're going to have dinners and celebrations and festivals. He says in verse 21, I hate, this is God talking. He says, I despise your feasts. I hate them. And I take no delight in your solemn assemblies. I take no delight in them. Go on, keep going on. 22. Even though you offer me your burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. And the peace offerings of your fattened animals, I will not look upon them. Now, you don't offer burnt animals, so this didn't mean much to you. Look at the next one, 23. Take away from me the noise of your songs. Take it away. Enough of these songs. Your worship times that you sing, I'm fed up with it. Take it away. To the melody of your harp, I will not listen. And then listen to this, verse 24. But let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Because God says, you want to live an unjust life? You want to live a life that says, justice is not so important. Loving God and God's love is very important. You want to live that kind of life? You can sing all you want. I would rather you shut the doors and got out of this place. I would rather you never sang another song to me. If you're going to live a life that doesn't uphold justice and that doesn't stand for justice. Brother, my sister, God is very serious about justice. God is very, very serious about justice. You can go back and read through the minor prophets and the charges he brings against Israel for it. He hates that they are unjust people. He hates it. To the point that he says, in one of the chapters, I couldn't find it in the prophets, but it's there. He says, I would rather you shut the doors of the temple. I would rather you just close up shop if you're going to be like this. God is serious about justice because the law shows us that his character is a God of justice. And the last one is that God is a God of community. See, all through the law, his whole thing is relational. He talks about how to relate with others. Whether you're a murderer, whether you're a slave, whether you're a farmer, whether you're a cattlesman and your ox has gone and gored somebody, it's there. Chapter 22 and 23, it's there. He says, what happens when an oxen gores somebody? Your oxen went and injured somebody else. What to do? What happens when it hits him and nothing happened to the man? He just got injured. What happens when it hits him and he died? What is the result? And all these values that he gives to their society is so that community would flourish. Okay, you don't believe me? Look in Exodus, okay? The reason why he gives this. Look in Exodus chapter 19, verse 5 onwards. He says, now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all the peoples, for the earth is mine. And listen to this, verse 6. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the people of Israel. You go and you keep my commands, and you will be a community that will reflect me. You will be a kingdom of priests. You will be a holy nation. Does it sound familiar? See, that's God's desire. That's God's design. When he went to the Jews, that was his design. When he came to you and me in the church, that was his design. Because in 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 9, Peter writes the words of God. He says, for you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a kingdom of priests, and a holy nation. That's who you and I are called to be. Exactly what God had called the Jews to be. A community set aside for God. Because God is a God of community. He never chose individuals to just be individuals in the Bible. Every individual he chose him to shape the community that he lived in. He never called him out of a situation and said, go stand alone. You and me, we'll work together. Let them all go away. He never did that. He called him out, changed him, challenged him, and sent him back to the community and said, now let's do something. Let's change this community. God is a God of love. He defines love in his very being. And he calls you to reflect him as a loving person. God is a God of justice. He defines justice in his very being. And he calls you to reflect him in your love and your pursuit for justice. And God is a God of community. He defines it in his very being. See, only the Christian faith can claim that. Because we are a monotheistic faith. We believe in one God, but a one God who is three. I can't tell you how it works. Don't ask me. I'm not that intellectual. But I know that because God is like that, he can claim community. Because there's perfect community in the triune God of the Bible. He embodies what it is to be community in himself. And he calls you and me to community. Now I started with the analogy of how we gave the house. If I came back and I found that most of the rules were kept but one was broken, then I'd be like, you didn't accurately reflect me. And I'd be fair in their estimation. You can't be friends with somebody and say, I only like this part of you. The rest of it, it's not my kind of thing. You don't do that. You can't be in an intimate walk with God and say, you're only going to relate with the loving heart of God and never live for the heart that beats for justice, for the heart that beats for community. You can't walk with God and say, I only like this church thing, the community thing, because everybody loves me, I love everybody, so it's nice. But justice and love and all those things is not my kind of thing. I'm not this love kind of person. It's all too soppy for me. Justice, I don't get the chance. I'm so busy the whole week. It's not really a thing that I'm, front on my heart. It doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. And I want to take you to one last passage as we close. Micah chapter 6. Again in the Minor Prophets. Micah chapter 6. From verse 6 onwards. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before Him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? There's a symbol of purity because the calf is tiny. So, should I come before Him with a pure offering? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams and 10,000s of rivers of oil? Should I come before Him with a big offering? Not just a pure one, but a big offering. Is the quantity of my offering what matters? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? Will the Lord accept then a sacrificial offering? So it's not just about purity, it's not about volume, but it's also sacrificial. My own firstborn, should I give? He has told you, O man, what is good and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. And again, there you see the three. You see the three. A God of justice wants you to do justice, to practice justice in your life. To love kindness. I like the other translation that says to love mercy. Because mercy is a virtue of love. It is a product of a loving heart. To love mercy, to love kindness. And to walk humbly with your God. And if you're trying to figure out how that ties in with community, well, go to James. It says, if we walk in the light as He is in the light, we have fellowship one with another. If you will walk humbly before your God, you will walk in the light. And you will have fellowship within the community of God. It's there again. All through Scripture, God is crying out to you, I'm a God of love. I'm a God of justice. And I'm a God of community, of relationships. And the call to you and me, when He gives you His law, is whether you're going to reflect it or not. Because that is the call on our life. That is the call that God gave Moses there at Sinai. He says, you're going into a promised land. You're going into a place full of foreign gods. You've left a place full of foreign gods. But Moses, you know I am the true and living God. This is the law. Live by it. And you will be a royal priesthood and a holy nation, a set apart nation that will reflect me. They botched it up. They botched it up badly. And God punished. And then He picked you and me in Christ. And the call remained the same. A royal priesthood, a holy nation that will reflect the character of our God in a world that needs desperately to know Him. The challenge is simple. Will you answer the call?